So let's talk about yarn. There's many different types, many different variations. The natural yarns are comprised of wool, cotton, and then various types of animal hair such as Angora mohair. And then they're also getting into plant-based products, which are the bamboo and soy. And if you haven't tried the bamboo or soy, I highly recommend you search for it because it's really, really great to work with. It feels really good. And then the most common man-made fiber in yarn is the acrylic. So depending on the fabric that you, or the yarn that you use, it could be a combination of both man-made and natural. Depending on that, what it's made of is how you wash it. So not all yarns can be washed in the machine. They come in various weights. You have the very lightweight lace type yarn that's almost like thread. And then you get up to the bulkier weight yarn. Needless to say, the bulkier it is, the faster it'll go, the less yarn you'll need. But let me show you how to find out what the classification of yarn is. Here's a standard yarn weight system grid. You will find it in the back of every Vogue knitting magazine. I don't think everybody publishes it, but it is in the back of the Vogue knitting. You can also go to the website called yarnstandards.com and you can download a copy there as well. So the chart shows you lace being 0 and super bulky being 6. And then it gives you a knit gauge and how many stitches you can expect in a 4-inch swatch. And it also recommends the needle size to use for that. Same for crocheting, it gives you the recommended needle size and the count per 4 inches. So one thing to know is that not every pattern will list the size of yarn that you need according to this system, and not every yarn will have this indication on them. So for example, when you're going to the store, you're going to look on the label and you're going to find that this is a number 4 weight yarn, and these are the recommended needle size, which will match up to the grid. Here's another example of a label that doesn't have the number on it. It does have the needle size, so you can basically use that as a guide and cross-reference it back to the grid system if you want. So if you find a project that you like and it calls for, let's say, a number 4 and you don't like the yarn that they designate, you can easily swap it out for another number 4. If it's a garment, you have to do a swatch. You must do a swatch and a gauge, actually is the technical term. So for instance, this gauge, here's my sample, and I would count the numbers, the stitches across and count the number of rows. I actually usually, when I do a swatch, I'll add 10 stitches, 5 on each side, 10 rows, 5 on each length, so that I can measure in between it. I don't have to worry about the material folding up on me or rolling over at the edges. And you don't want to stretch it, needless to say, when you're measuring it, but that gives you an easy way to do it. So the other thing is your knitting needles. You're going to vary your needle. You're not tied to the needle that's called out in the pattern. It's whatever needle is going to get you to the right gauge. You can, like I said, you can add the stitches. You also want to make sure that you do check the gauge, because if you're making a garment, it won't fit if the gauge is not correct. And I can attest to that personally. Can you create new yarn? Yes, you can. So here's 3 yarns that are same colorway, and I've taken them and combined them together to get a little piece, which I crocheted just to get an idea of what that finished piece will look like with all 3 yarns. So do I want to go forward? Do I like that? Do I want something different? So there's just a little sample of combining 3 yarns together. So if you plan on washing your garment, then, or whatever it is that you make, then you really need to wash the sample that you make. And if you want to understand the samples marked on the label, you can get the list on Wikipedia by searching for laundry symbol. They have a really extensive list on what all the symbols mean, and it'll make it that much easier for you. So if you're going to wash this, you want to measure it in advance, and this time you do want to go out to the ends on both sides, length and width, and note the measurement. And then you're going to wash it per the instructions. Now, if you're going to make So if you're going to make your own yarn pattern, then you want to go with the washing instructions that are the least aggressive. So if I'm pretty certain that this eyelash yarn would say do not put it in the dryer and hand knit or hand wash only, so then your final product would be the same. That's the least objectionable, the least stress on the yarn, and that's the way you're going to wash them. Know that if you have most wool and some silk will actually blossom in the process of washing. So you want to be aware of that. It may grow a little bit that way. You want to know what the shrinkage is. So when you dry it and you're finished, then you'll measure it again. And however much it shrinks, then you'll modify your pattern to adjust for that shrinkage. If you're doing a wool felting project and you're using mostly 100% wool, it's going to be a really loose weave. And then when you felt it, it'll shrink up and become the felt. So the other issue on washing is that you want to make sure that your yarn is color fast. If you're using a yarn you've not used before and it's variegated, most likely it's going to be color fast. If you're using a couple yarns in different patterns, that's a good time to check and make sure it's color fast. So one of the other things that I do is if I give something away, like a baby blanket, I'll make a little card and just say it's 100% acrylic, machine wash, put it in the dryer at medium heat. I'll just punch a little hole in it. I'll add a little ribbon and I'll tie it to the blanket so that they know how to wash it. So one of the last tricks with the yarn is what happens when you get this home and you don't really know what to do with it. If you've bought this in a yarn shop, they will most likely roll it for you into a ball. All you have to do is ask them. If they don't, or if you buy it at a national retailer, you buy it online or something, all you have to do is untwist it, which is sometimes easier said than done. There you go. So now you're going to untwist it again because it's going to come into a circle. So you got to just be gentle with it, figure out where all the ends are. And then it's going to have one, if not two or three or more of these little pieces of yarn that are binding it together. So when you cut those, sometimes when you cut those, they'll be the actual end of the yarn, and sometimes they're just a piece of yarn that's tied on. So you'll cut that, you'll find the end. What I do is, once those are cut, then you don't want to mess with it too much. I'll take it and I'll wrap it around, I'll lay it down over the back of my office chair because it's the perfect width. And then I'll find the end and then I'll just start rolling it that way. So that's how you open them up, and that's how you find the pieces that you need to cut off, and that's how you deal with the crazy twisted yarn.